Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to today's session on contract lifecycle management. My name is Martin, and we're very excited to be joined by Knowliah, which is part of stp.one, to talk more in depth about how contracts can be better optimized. If you have any questions, please note that you can ask them in the chat. And without further ado, I give the floor to Seam.
Thank you very much, Martin, and welcome everyone to today's session, End Contract Chaos, your step-by-step guide to seamless contract lifecycle management. This session is hosted by stp.one, specifically also the experts of Knowliah. We have Yves Lefer with us today with over more than 10 years of experience in helping corporate legal departments with the digitalization of their department and optimizing their workflows. So Yves, maybe you can briefly introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes, good morning to everyone. Very happy and excited to be here in this webinar together with our dear partners from ECLA for this session on contract lifecycle management, which is a hot topic today in organizations, and we are looking very much forward to introducing you in this exciting topic. And myself, I've been with Knowliah for over 10 years, as Sean just mentioned, helping and supporting corporate legal departments in their challenges when it comes to digitalization, and more specifically also within contract lifecycle management, and have been doing this in the Benelux area, but also in the rest of Europe and even in the States and in Canada. And we are part of the STP group, which is a German legal tech company who acquired us a year ago, accelerating our product development and our growth into the market. So very happy to present you with our insights over the past years and how the future looks like for contract lifecycle management.
Thank you very much, Yves. And today's agenda will be about 6 major points. The first one, we will dig a little bit deeper in what the current landscape is specifically for legal professionals when it comes to managing contracts. Second point is that we will go a little bit more in depth into specifically contract lifecycle management and understanding of the different stages. Then we will discuss the benefits of CLM for corporate legal departments, very concrete with very real life examples. The fourth topic will be the must-have features of effectively implementing a CLM system, because of course digitalization is something that we still cannot ignore anymore these days, and we will give you a rough overview on different features that can be a true added value when you're selecting a tool or service to support yourself in this. Then we have the fifth topic, and that's a more a practical angle. That's on how to select, implement, and use. How do you select the right vendor, the right partner? How do you implement it, and how do you use it effectively within your legal team, but also for the other business units within the company? Then the last part will be like a Q&A session. We will leave around 10 up to 5 minutes for extra questions, but please do not hesitate to ask your questions already during the session in the chat box below. We will then take some time during the session to answer them as well. It depends, of course, on the length of the answer. If it needs a longer answer, then we will tackle your question at the end of the session. But first, we want to kick off the session to get to know our audience a little bit better, and that's with a question which gives us more a navigation on where you are today within your team. So is your department currently using software for contract lifecycle management? Yes or no? Or are you considering purchasing it and you have already some tools in mind? Or are you considering purchasing it, but you're here in this session because you have no clue how to start with it? I will kick off the poll in a couple of seconds. So please answer the question, and then we will quickly discuss. because it really doesn't matter if you're already using software for CLM, yes or no. You are here to learn how you can maybe improve the way of working with your current software if you maybe need to switch. And if you have no clue where to start, then it will also be a very valuable session, because we will really go from a strategy on how to choose a provider to also implement it into your organization. And I see the votes are coming in. Also, if you're, for example, ticking the checkbox from yes, you are currently already using software and tools, please do not hesitate to drop also in the chat box, what are you using? Inspire your peers with the different ways of working you have today in your legal department. All right, I will end the poll in a couple of seconds. I see that everyone voted. All right. So normally, Eve, can you also see the results or not?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, the majority of the group, is considering purchasing it. There are some people who already have software for CLM. Are you surprised by these results, or is it something that you
No,
still
no, not
taste?
really. In most organizations that we come across, and these are typically mid-sized to large corporates, contract management obviously is in the minds of people, but still often through Excel sheets and plain servers or SharePoint sites that are supporting contract lifecycle management, but which is not the way anymore that you can guarantee compliancy and reduce risks and reduce costs. So most organizations, if not all, are at least considering or actively looking now to implement a contract lifecycle management tool to be able to support compliancy in the ever growing legislation that is imposed to the organizations.
Thank you very much. And those who have no clue where to start, you definitely get the guidelines from us here today. But first, we want to have a quick look at the current landscape. This might sound familiar for all attendees here in the room, but if you have other views on it, please do not hesitate again to drop your opinion in the chat box here below. So what is the current landscape regarding contracts? There are challenges in the traditional contract management way of working systems in legal departments, but also across other business units. What happens today is that there still are too many manual processes when it comes to contract management. This leads to inefficiencies and definitely a higher risk of errors. The lack of visibility and control over the whole contract portfolio within companies is still one of the major issues and or challenge to tackle, not only for legal but also for contract management within the company. Maybe the IT department, other business units suffer from it as well. So the need for contract lifecycle management arose. And Eve, can you quickly explain why that is and why the focus on contract lifecycle management today is so major?
Yeah, sure. Well, as I mentioned before, legislation is there. Is it for CSRD, for third-party risk management, for audits, for due diligence? There are so many reasons why it is key to have a proper contract lifecycle management tool in place to be able to enhance collaboration internally, but also to be able to comply with those new legislations and restrictions that are often imposed to many organizations, and depending on the type of industry that you're in. But we see that it is cross-industry that such challenges are encountered. So the need is there, and automation, of course, and digitalization play a huge role in there, enable you with the same amount of resources that you have and the same amount of people that you often have. That is not necessarily the case that you, with those new challenges on legislation, that you have more people. So you need tools to support you to be able to prove that you are becoming compliant and that you are supporting risk management and cost reduction for the organization. So that's what we see overall in every type of organization.
Okay. Thank you. Another thing that we noticed the last couple of years, Eve, is the, let's call it, contract battle between legal and other departments. Like, contracts not only the responsibility of legal, other business units get involved, and that, yeah, causes some friction. Can you please explain the biggest
Yes.
challenges that they have today?
Yes, Seen, and that is indeed very important for those of you that are looking into introducing a tool, and probably you're already encountering the challenge, is that contract lifecycle management involves pretty much everybody in the organization, whether you're in purchasing, in IT, in finance, or in sales, or in the business, and of course in legal. Everybody gets in contact with contracts. So they're all involved, and everybody has his way of working. If you ask sales guys, they want to have contract management entirely integrated in their CRM system. Legal wants its proper system, and then procurement also has their way of looking at contracts and maintaining supplier relations, etc. So finding a common ground that is supporting all those needs and requirements needs integration for sure. So integration with the tools that everybody is using, but also in the user friendliness and in the workflows that are supported by a CLM tool. All these considerations need to be there to ensure that you can make everybody happy, which is not always easy. And then in many or in most organizations, the demand for contract lifecycle management comes from the legal department, but it's often in conjunction with procurement, who also has their requirements. And then we see really the battle where the one that shouts loudest or has the most budgets that can win then and impose its tool. Well, this is not really the way that you want to do it. So it's to make sure that you can involve the requirements and the needs of often both, and it's mostly procurement and legal, so that you can come up with a tool that brings satisfaction and supports the KPIs and the needs of the different stakeholders in the process, and also other business stakeholders that are wanting to have interaction with the legal department or with procurement, for example, sales, that everybody has the benefit of the tool without having to entirely change their way of working. So that is what we see, and where we can also support and help understanding how the tool can support everyone in the organization and contribute to the KPIs they're having.
Thank you very much, Eve. Then the latest clock survey from 2023 shows that companies who are definitely using CLM tools reduce the contract cycle times by an average of 32%, with even top performers achieving reductions of over 50%. Surprising result or not, Eve?
Well, no, actually not, because if you are able to gradually, because this is also important, don't do everything at once. If you already can start with making sure that you can centralize all your contractual obligations with suppliers and customers in an environment that helps you to automatically indicate when contracts come to an expiry or when they're automatically renewed. This is already huge. It seems very simple, but implementing this and bringing this change into your organization is the first step, but which brings you a lot of satisfaction and a lot of benefits when it comes to risk management, but also cost reduction. Imagine what your CFO or your CEO would say if you could claim that you could reduce costs on a yearly basis for an amount of between 6 and 9%. This is not mentioned here, but this is also common research that proves that you can save 69% of the yearly revenue of your organization, preventing you from re-engaging with a contractual obligation that you do not want to, because you missed the termination date, and that you are automatically re-engaged and have to renew where you don't want to. So these elements help you in reducing costs, but also if you have the proper tools in place to reduce the life cycle And if you reduce the life cycle, you have better relations with your internal customers because they're happy that it goes way quicker because their interactions with their counterparts, being the suppliers and the customers, goes way quicker. So it really enhances the time and it improves the time that you spend in such cumbersome and often repeating operations into your organization.
Yeah, thank you, Eve. And for example, this statement and everything that Eve just told can be also very interesting for legal departments to sell actually the plan, the implementation of a CLM tool, also towards the C-level. That really refers a little bit to what we said previously, the conflict sometimes between legal and the other business units. Sometimes you need to defend the plans, the digital plans that you have, and these statements really take them into consideration when you're explaining what your next steps are in digitalization of the department. Then we go a little bit more in depth into understanding contract lifecycle management. We talked a lot about it, CLM, contract lifecycle management, but to really know what to improve, here, it's very important to have a whole overview on what a contract lifecycle exactly is for companies, for legal departments, in collaboration with suppliers, with sales, that you do not miss a step and can see actually for each step where you can get supported. And let's go a little bit more in depth in those 5 key stages, Eve. We see them here. Maybe you can quickly guide us through the 5 stages.
Yes, thank you, Seen. So there are many ways of looking at a contract lifecycle, and this is one of them. But it's in our opinion, and in the experience that we have with different organizations across Europe, the most common one is everybody has to do or is involved and implied within contract creation. So having the necessary tools to help you and to support you in enhancing the process of creation of a contract based on templates. So template management is their key, of course. And later on in this session, we're going to deep dive more in the key features that you need for such a system. So, but contract creation is the first step. And then when a contract is there, whether it's created by your own or it's imposed by a third party, you will need to review and negotiate on that contract. Also, that process is not only legal that is involved. Legal is often in support of the negotiation that is led by the business. But then it's for you as a legal department very important to be able to be very efficient in there and support the business as much as you can, but also avoid risks and avoid missing important stuff in the negotiation and certainly in the review of the contract. Once done, you'll need to approve, and then you have different cycles of approval within the organization. You have different people involved. Delegation of authorities plays a big role here. Who is involved for which type of contract, for which type of budget, for which type of region? Often different people are involved. So if a system can help you and support you in indicating the people that are involved, then you can really also again support the business way quicker in their approval cycle, which is of course key for supplier and customer relations. And then of course the signing. Today it's pretty much not done anymore to sign with wet signature and scan the copy, etc. There are enough signing tools in the market, and your tools should be able to integrate with such signing tools so that the process is also automated. Once approved, it should be signed, and invitations should be sent automatically linked to that signing tool. Key as well in being quicker, supporting the business in starting their relations in a more efficient way than probably today. And then when your contract is signed, it needs to be stored, it needs to be centralized. Signed means it needs to return, and you have the legally signed copy properly filed so that you have the guarantee that you can always fall back on it. And then you need to execute your contract. You have obligations towards your suppliers, or your suppliers have obligations towards yourself just such as with customers. So registering that and monitoring that is also key. And of course, termination and renewal, the monitoring of that is key for making sure that you do not engage in contracts that you do not want to, or that you miss deadlines and that you have costs that could be avoided. And again, I mentioned it before, 6 to 9% of an organization's revenue are spent on costs that could be avoided. So if you can show and prove to your C-level and to your organization that you're contributing as a legal department and saving costs of up to 6 to 9% of your annual revenue, then you clearly make a statement, and then you prove the added value that the legal department is bringing by bringing in such a CLM tool in the support of your organization.
All right, thank you very much, Yves. But another maybe a very important point, something that we noticed, I think, in our daily conversations with legals, Yves, is that contract lifecycle management is not just about the CLM system itself. It's what you already mentioned about integration. It should seamlessly integrate with all the current tools that the department might already be using or will use in the future. Can you give some examples of tools that are really an added value that they need to take into consideration?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dean. Indeed, as I mentioned before as well, the integration with your stack of tools that your organization is using is simply key, because otherwise you will not be able to involve the business into your CLM tool. And if you want to be efficient, and if you want to prove the benefits of a CLM tool, then you need to involve the business. And they will want it too, but they will have to be convinced if you can prove that the tool can integrate with the tools they're using. And then, for example, CRM for sales, if they want to have a contract reviewed, they should be able to put a request to the legal department from within their CRM system. And all the data they have already gathered and inputted into their CRM systems should then automatically be transferred to the CLM tool, so that you don't have double work and that you can integrate those processes. Just as you have your ERP system where all suppliers are managed and all data of suppliers is present. Well, if you have to re-input that kind of data in your CLM tool, then you're losing a lot of efficiency. So a simple connection with those tools enabling to recuperate the master data that you're having in your ERP system, and also if there's something changing, that the CLM tool is aware of that, is also key for better collaboration. And then one of the major integrations that is often put aside, but when we look at our users, for example, when we ask what is the best feature, or what is the thing that helps you most in your day-to-day activities, well, it's systematically the integration with Outlook or with Gmail, where you have the ability to make sure that relevant email, important email related to a contractual negotiation or contractual discussions, internally or externally, since most information is still exchanged through the channel of email, if you have the ability to automatically centralize those relevant email into the contract repository or the contract lifecycle management system, then you're really bringing added value also to yourself and to the organization. Nobody should look into your email box, but people should be able to have a 360-degree view on the whole contract, and correspondence is key in there. So those kinds of integrations really help organizations in their knowledge management as well, but also in their risk management when it comes to having a proper overview of the whole contractual negotiation and obligations.
Thank you, Yves. And you just mentioned it, knowledge management. It's a question in the chat box. How does CLM interact with knowledge management tools?
Well, that's a very good question, and we're touching base on knowledge management a little further in this session as well. A lot of importance is in the comprehension and the definition of knowledge management. You have knowledge management overall in an organization, and you have legal knowledge management. And when we look at legal knowledge management, you have the internal knowledge of your organization, being all the contracts and all the clauses that you're creating, the templates that you're managing, the advices that you're giving as a legal department towards the business. whether it is in a contract matter or any other type of matter. That is internal knowledge, but you also have the external knowledge, being legislation that changes or specific rules and on contractual obligations that specific types of industry have. If your tool is able to capture that kind of knowledge in an as automated way as possible, then you are actually doing knowledge management. Because asking people on besides their day-to-day activities to have a knowledge management responsibility, this is very beautiful, and in theory it sounds very useful, but it's simply not practical. People do not spend time on knowledge management because they're occupied with their day-to-day work. So tools are there to support you in that, making sure that knowledge is captured, expertise is captured, and that as a user, when you need knowledge, when you need to rely on what has been produced or has been written or has been created before, that you have the necessary tools, and search is very important in there, that you have the proper search capabilities of retrieving that knowledge to reuse what already exists or what already has been created. If you're new to the organization and you need to do something within a contract or create a clause, it's better to search for what already exists and maybe you can reuse than to recreate and reinvent the wheel all the time. So that is knowledge management. For example, the Knowliah tool itself has, and our name states it as well. So we are founded on knowledge management. Knowledge is key within legal and will bring the value that you require. So knowledge management is entirely incorporated into our CLM tool, but you can also integrate with existing knowledge management tools if requested. APIs are there to set up such kind of integrations.
All right, thank you, Yves. And indeed, we will dig a little bit deeper on knowledge management and search in another part of this session. So now we got an overview on CLM, some concrete benefits that everyone needs to keep in mind. Again, when you need to defend your digitalization project to other departments within the company, we have mentioned here some quick benefits. Yves, can you lead us through these four, please?
Yes. Well, these are typically the main benefits that you can realize by introducing a proper integrated collaborative CLM tool. You will become much more efficient as a legal department. You can outsource or push back work to the business by automating processes, also making it easier for them to request for a review or request for an NDA, so that it can all be up to 80 to 90% entirely automated, so that you can concentrate much more on knowledge production, knowledge creation, expertise, contracts optimization, template optimization, and clauses, etc. So of course, efficiency is key. And that will bring also, by doing it properly, by integrating the whole organization, you will support compliancy towards all the new legislation that is constantly coming to us, whether it's CSRD or any other type of contractual obligations that you're having to comply with suppliers, but also with customers, will reduce your risk and eventually, of course, reduce your costs, as I already mentioned a couple of times. Doing it properly can make sure that you can save 6 to 9% of the annual revenue of your organization. This is a pretty blunt statement. If you can do that to your CFO or to your CEO, that you can actually save that kind of money for the organization just by properly introducing contract lifecycle management in the organization. It also can help you to defend your budget that you need, and it will also help you to prove the added value that the corporate legal department has in the organization. Way too many times we're still confronted with legal departments that are complaining that the organization does not know what they're actually doing. What are you doing all day? You need more people. Why? Because it's very hard to explain and to put metrics on what the legal department is doing. Therefore, KPI management is very important. We did recently a specific webinar on KPI management for legal departments. So also something interesting if you would like to deep dive on that. And in the end, by doing so, you will create much more satisfaction with your internal customers. So the service levels that you're bringing are of a much higher quality, creating higher customer satisfaction. And that is in the end what you also want to achieve as a corporate legal department in support of your organization.
Thank you, Eve. Indeed. What Eve just said, of course, it's not just something random. There are a lot of surveys who tell us indeed, like for legal departments, that they see CLM as a critical tool for driving digital innovation and modernizing legal operations. As mentioned, we just drop here some statements. Of course, there's a lot of research behind it. If you want to know more about that, do not hesitate to contact us also after the session. Also, regarding all the arguments that have been mentioned here already, the presentation will be made available, and if you have any more questions, then we're there, of course, to support you. So now let's go a little bit more practical. You're convinced you want to improve the contract lifecycle management of your organization, and you definitely see that there's a system needed. What are the must-have features? Because if you're going to contact a software provider, they will maybe overload you with a lot of features. But what are the main priority features that a CLM tool should have? Because otherwise it will not be workable for your legal department and the other business units. Eve, you already mentioned it. It starts maybe with automated workflows.
Yes.
Explain it a little bit.
Yes, workflows. What are workflows? Workflows are a technical way to support processes in your organization. And when you think of contract lifecycle management, always start thinking about those processes. What are the processes in my specific organization? How are internally flows around contracts designed? Are they good, or do they need improvement? And if they're good, how can we digitalize them in the best way? And there, the reason why automated workflows or automation in processes and workflows is key is because it brings you time, and it saves you time. And time is of the essence often in contractual relations, because it's the first interaction that you're having with your partner, whether it's a supplier or a customer. And if you do this in a very efficient and lean and way, then you will bring the right image also to your partners, and also internally, of course. If you're able to do it properly in an efficient way, you will avoid mistakes, you will reduce your risk, you will save time, and eventually save costs as well.
Indeed, thank you, Eve. And as you see here, we try to represent it with a visual. We don't have the time during this session to actually show how an automated workflow can work, but the advice, of course, there is to, after the session, book a demo with a legal tech provider so that you can actually see how that works. Another topic, template management. Eve, you already mentioned it earlier. Why is it so important in a CLM system, and why is it a should have?
Yes. So in order to avoid mistakes, repetitive mistakes, in order to ensure that you are becoming or supporting compliancy towards all that new legislation, proper template management linked to clause libraries that are in some kind of way intelligent, that help you to capture clauses, to review them, to have version management on clauses. If there is anything changing, that it's also changing in all templates that are using that clause. So that is to support your compliancy and to avoid risks, to avoid repetitive work, and then in the end, of course, to avoid mistakes in the management of your templates. You can do this very manually, but then it requires a lot of attention, a lot of time, and a lot of work. Whereas there are tools today to really help you and support you and prevent actually risk and even advise you in proper and better template creation and template management.
All right, thank you, Eve. And then knowledge management and search, we talked about it also earlier on. Can you please explain a little bit more on that, why it's important?
Yes, Seen, of course, and that's what I indeed mentioned before. Knowledge management is key if you want to really make the difference and bring added value. If you have a system that does not really capture what you're doing and what you're creating, then efficiency is far away, because if you're not able to reuse and to stop reinventing the wheel all the time and to rewrite what already exists, again, you're not bringing added value. So knowledge management has the ability with tools, and auto classification is one of them, for example, where metadata are automatically attributed to every single document, every single email, without you as a user to be involved in that, but that intelligence is created in the back of the tool, so that it will support you in the later stage. For example, in search is key to be able to retrieve what already exists, what already has been approved, what is good, what is reusable, so that you can actually move forward in a way quicker way. And also, of course, when you're having an issue, or when you really need a contractual obligation, or a contract, or a clause that you know that it's going to be needed for proof in a certain dispute or whatever, search is then key to be able to retrieve that kind of information, whether it's in your repository or outside, because not everything is necessarily centralized into your CLM tool. You have a lot of information that will be still sitting on SharePoint, or on OneDrive, or on Teams. So the tool needs to be able to connect with those environments as well, to be able to retrieve information that is sitting in there. So think of that when you're selecting tools, that they're not only being a plain repository, but it is also interconnected with other tools, so that you can also benefit from the information and the expertise that is sitting outside your tools.
Then the next one, e-signature integration. We already talked about it also earlier on. You cannot ignore it, I think, Yves, when it goes to CLM. E-signature is a must.
No, this is now something that is expected by pretty much every organization and every relation that you're starting with a supplier, with a partner. People are not so much accepting anymore wet signatures and printing contracts and scanning them again. So we see that many organizations, before they do anything else in digitalization and before they introduce any other tools, they often start with introducing a DocuSign or an Adobe Sign or any other signing tool to support those processes. So when you're introducing a CLM tool, make sure that they have standard integrations with those kinds of tools, because it's so easy when you then sign a contract and that signed copy automatically returns into your system and files itself in the right contract matter, without you to having be concerned that the actually legally signed copy is properly filed. And that really brings compliancy, it brings insurance, and it reduces risks, of course, in your organization, because the contractual relation that you're having is actually defining the value of your organization as well, whether it's with a supplier or with a customer. The value of your organization is based on your contractual relations. And if you are in an audit or in a due diligence and you don't have an overview of all your contractual relations, signed copies, of course, are then key. Then you have a lot of work, and in many cases a lot of trouble as well.
And then also analytics and reporting. Yves, can you explain that a little bit, why it should be very important to consider?
Yes, and that for corporate legal departments, it's not always that easy to be able to define what kind of reporting, what kind of KPI monitoring, what kind of analytics are relevant to the department itself, to be able to do some activity tracking, what is happening within the team, what are we focusing on, what takes a lot of work, and what kind of internal customers are demanding a lot of interactions, what kind of processes are working well or not. That's for the internal efficiency of the department, but of course also into the contribution of the overall KPIs of the organization. How is legal contributing to risk? How is legal contributing to compliancy? How is legal contributing to cost reduction? How is legal improving EBITDA of the organization? These are key concerns of a chief legal officer, of a CFO. And if you have the ability through your system, and more specifically here within your contract lifecycle management system, if you have the ability to have those reports at hand and on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, then you're really bringing the value that the organization is expecting from you. But then you need a tool that supports you in the capturing of the information and the data, because if you don't have that, you can of course not have the reports and the analytics out of it.
And then last but not least, yeah, we also talked about it earlier. Again, collaboration tools. Maybe let's go quickly through it, Yves.
Yes, well, collaboration, as mentioned in the beginning, contract lifecycle management is no longer only a concern of legal. It is the whole organization that is involved and concerned and wanting to have proper contract lifecycle management. So the collaboration needs to be supported by the tool, whether it's in the requests, in the review, in the approval, in the signing, in the search, in the alerts, and integration with other tools. The tools that your business colleagues are using is obviously key to ensure the adoption of the CLM tool, because you can have the best CLM tool in the world with the greatest features. If it's not adopted properly and introduced in the organization, then you have a failure of a project, and that's not what you want. So collaboration and integration is key.
Very clear. So maybe a quick poll. What is, from all these features that you've heard, they're all interesting, you all want them tomorrow, but what are maybe the least interesting features for you and your team today? I will open the poll in a couple of seconds, and then we will quickly discuss the results. So is it maybe the automated workflows, the template management, the knowledge management and search, the e-signature integration, analytics and reporting, or the collaboration tools? So if you need to pick one that you're saying like, please, I don't want to focus on that one today, might be interesting in the future, please let us know. Or maybe it is because you already worked with it. So it's already a tackled box, checkbox that you don't need to investigate further. I see the votes coming in. Very curious. And of course, Yves will discuss the results with us and see if it's surprising or not. I see people still voting. Let's quickly close the poll in 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 5. All right, I'm sharing the results. Yves, can you see the results at the moment?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So we have e-signature integration. That's the least interesting feature according to the audience, followed by knowledge management and search and analytics and reporting. Are you surprised by these results, or does it sound familiar with what you hear in your conversations these days?
Well, it's not surprising. So the least interesting e-signing integration is because probably most of the organizations already have e-signing, and it's that common and that normal and standard expected that the integration is there, that it's probably the least interesting. Analytics and reporting was the other one, and knowledge management and search, and that is not surprising because knowledge management and search is an ever ongoing challenge because nothing is done on knowledge management, and organizations do not know how to introduce knowledge management, and therefore you need partners, tools that can really help you in introducing knowledge management in a proper way and offering you the possibilities to search in a proper way as well across your data and your documents. And out of that, and in parallel and very much linked to that, is analytics and reporting, because you can do whatever you want if you do not have the reports out of it in a proper way to be able to prove to yourself and to the organization what the status is of contracts, what the risk status is, the cost status, the engagements that you're having, and the obligations that you're having towards your different stakeholders, suppliers, or customers. Then you're not proving and adding value to the organization. So that is not surprising that came out as being more important features than others.
All right, thank you, Eve. Then here again, we have another statement. Eve already mentioned it earlier. I go a little bit more quickly through it because we do not have that much time left. Is major important thing, centralize all contract related information. Also studies show that it improves the visibility and control over the fully contract portfolio of a company and a legal department. So now let's dig into how to select, implement and use a tool, because we can always say to the audience, you need to implement a tool, but how do you effectively do that? We have here written out an implementation strategy, again in 5 steps from theory to practice. Eve, can you maybe elaborate for every step a little bit more?
Yes. So implementing a tool always requires some pre-work and pre-thinking. So assessing the needs and the objectives of your specific organization is key. Not only the legal department, but also the rest of the business. So please always bear in mind that other people have other requirements and other needs. Try to gather them. Keep on steering the project from a legal perspective, and that you can still push the buttons, but involve key stakeholders so that you know what will bring added value, what is needed to bring added value to the organization. And then selecting, of course, a CLM solution and evaluating the partner. We're going to come to that later on. Is key. And then also from the beginning, start thinking about your actual data, your actual contracts. Where are they? What do you want to do with them? Do you want to migrate them? Do you have the time and the resources to do so? Because they're probably scattered around the organization or in very complex folder structures that you know that when you will migrate them and want to have them properly centralized in a tool, that it will require a lot of work and a lot of cleaning. Make sure that when you select a partner, that they have a lot of experience and expertise when it comes to legacy handling, data migration, and maybe not necessary to migrate everything, but with intelligent search tools on your legacy, you might be able to avoid very complex and not so cost-efficient migration projects. So always keep that in mind when selecting a partner and a tool. And of course, change management. If your organization is shouting and very ready to have a CLM tool, then it might be a little bit easier. But if that's not the case, then proper communication, and it's all about communication in that case, before you introduce the tool and why and how, etc., and what the benefits will be for all your stakeholders internally, is key to make a success out of it, to make a successful project and to make the best benefit that you can bring to the organization. And then you do not know everything. So having a partner that can help you with best practices, what works, what doesn't work, because you might think that some things will work. And if you have a certain approach or a certain functionality that you would need that will bring the difference, if you can rely on best practices from other industries, from other markets, or from your peers in other countries, and or maybe even competitors of yours, how do they do it? How do they tackle contract management, and what was successful and where did they fail, so that you avoid doing the same mistakes?
Thank you, Eve. This is also a slide that maybe some participants already saw in a previous session before summer. We have here a concrete example of a legal tech journey on how to find, explore, implement, use, and improve legal tech into your organization. And as you can see on the slide, contract management system is part of that. We maybe won't go too in-depth into this concrete case today, but if you want to learn more about it, please do not hesitate to contact us afterwards. And then we also have some quick examples. As Eve already mentioned, you need to define your needs and objectives. This is a rough example of a first checklist where you can start for your legal department. Maybe, Eve, you can explain one of the needs a little bit more in depth and one of the objectives. The presentation will be sent afterwards, so people can also read through it when they find the time for it. But can you please choose?
Yeah, so this is merely to share with you, so that you, when you're thinking or occupied with selecting a tool, that you can run through them. This is not written in stone, but it helps you maybe with elements that you were not thinking of. So this checklist is always useful to make sure that you don't miss out on maybe key processes or key challenges of other internal stakeholders that you did not took into account, and which can maybe have a big influence when you're rolling the tool out into the organization, and that when you were aware of it before, it could have helped you a lot. So this is really to help you in analyzing and selecting a tool.
Indeed.
If you have any questions on that, please do not hesitate, of course.
Definitely. And every need, of course, results in an objective. And that's what we were trying to visualize here for you today. Then another list that you definitely should make for your department and also in collaboration with the other business units are the key requirements for a CLM tool. It can go from document creation, automation to e-signature integration. We already discussed that, compliance management, approval of workflows. Here you can also go through it when the presentation will be sent to you afterwards. An important one to still mention is keep an eye on technology and integration. Eve, maybe you can briefly explain the key points here,
Yeah.
why
So
that's important.
indeed, Seen. Thanks. So here are the key topics that you should take into consideration when selecting a tool that will best fit within your organization, within the context of your organization. Is look at the tool itself. Is it appealing? The user interface, user experience. How are people navigating through, or are you able to navigate through the tool? What kind of integration capabilities does the tool offer? Which doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do everything now, but you need to be sure that you can integrate in the future with key other tools that are used in most of collaboration tools into the organization, whether it's your email, whether it's a SharePoint or Teams or CRM, ERP systems that can really bring added value. Scalability is today you have maybe some requirements, but those will change for sure. Your organization changes. You might acquire other companies, or you might get acquired, or your business will change. So the tool needs to be adaptable and adaptable to those changes, and scalable, of course, in the sense that your requirements of digitalization will evolve as well over the years. And then deployment involve IT. What do you want to do? Do you want a cloud hosting? Do you want on-premise? Do you want a hybrid structure? Depending on legislation of your organization in different countries, it can be very important to be able to have hybrid structures as well, where data remains in the country of its origin and is not leaving, but you still have a cloud tool, but with on-premise capabilities as well. So this is in a more complex situation, but know that these things are possible. And API is there for, again, integration, and maybe needs that you're not having or knowing today will be there tomorrow. So access through APIs is key. And then, of course, AI. We all talk and walk around AI, and AI is key to start supporting you in very repetitive tasks. So when selecting a supplier, make sure that they have a clear vision on artificial intelligence and how it can be of added value to the legal departments, to the legal counsel, to the paralegal, in the different types of activities, in the different legal operations that you're having. So the vision is very important. What is available today, but what is the organization or the vendor, the software looking at, and how are they looking towards replacing repetitive tasks by intelligent technology without giving back on quality and legal and avoiding legal risk, of course. So the knowledge of your vendor and the vision will be very important in that.
Thank you, Eve. And then two other things to consider while selecting the right CLM tool. We want to give you also a rough guideline on the vendor evaluation and the cost and ROI analysis, looking at the product roadmap, see for the vendor stability regarding cost and ROI analysis, the pricing model. Is it an interesting one for you? Compare it, maybe different models with each other. Eve, can you maybe also give one advice regarding these two items?
Yes, sure. I think in the vendor evaluation, product roadmap and customer support and training are key. So what are you having today? And in most cases, the software will bring what you will need today. But the roadmap is very important in knowing what will be possible tomorrow and how is the vendor looking at this and what are they prioritizing, and therefore their experience and their type of customers on an international level will be very important to understand. So always look at what is offered today, but also what will come in the near and further future. And then having a vendor that is helping you with best practices in rolling out your tool, in how to onboard the legal department and the rest of the organization to have a proper deployment and ensuring success and adoption of the tool is extremely important in training and of course also in support throughout the usage of the tool. And then for a cost and return on investment analysis, there are many things to consider, but total cost of ownership is an important one. Make sure that you consider all costs. You can have the tool, but you also have everything that goes around, the preparation and the involvement of other stakeholders within the organization. Take that into account, because if you do not take it into account, you might come up with a surprise when it comes, for example, to legacy handling. I touched base on that before. How is the supplier or the vendor dealing with that? Are they in hidden costs somewhere? So make sure that there's a very transparent communication and indication of the total costs of your introduction of a CLM tool.
Thank you very much, Yves. And then some last tips to fasten up the process. How do you evaluate a vendor? I think it's all common sense, maybe already, like an RFP process, vendor demos, pilot testing, scoring and ranking, and then the final decisions where you definitely need to involve key stakeholders. Yves, any tips and advice on these 5 steps?
Well, the first one, the RFP or the RFI process, either you decide to do it or not. Know that vendors can also help you in I think this session here, the insights that are shared here can really help you in defining what is important to put into my RFP, what is required besides the obvious data that you need from a supplier, but what are the other questions that we can check with the market, with suppliers, whether they can help and support in there or not. So in this session, I think there's a lot of information that you can use to challenge your suppliers, your potential suppliers in their offers that they're bringing to you for introduction of a CLM tool.
All right, thank you. And then last but not least, of course, we talked about it often, compliance and risk management. Stay compliant, so take into consideration data privacy and security, the contractual compliance, the disaster recovery of the company, of the organization, the third-party certifications like the ISOs and others. So Yves, maybe a final sentence on this one?
Yeah, well, I briefly said something about it, but data privacy and security is key. It has a lot to do with the new legislation, existing legislation. So make sure that you select a tool, a vendor that can support you in data privacy and security. Contractual information is very confidential. It's defining the value of your organization. And you do not want to play around with this. So make sure that data privacy and security is guaranteed and offered by the supplier.
All right. Then the next steps, implementation and change management and post-selection considerations and best practices. This relies to the last step that we discussed in the implementation strategy, training and onboarding for implementation and change management. The post-selection considerations is indeed looking at the continuous improvement. It also refers to the product roadmap. You can grow together with the tool. Eve, do you have anything else to add to this information here?
Well, the only thing seen that I think is valuable to add here is that you can have a tool. There are many tools. A tool is key. A good tool is key, of course, but also a partner that can introduce you or help you to introduce you that tool properly and make sure that you cover the needs of your organization, because every organization has other needs, but that you're able to introduce a tool in a proper way that you actually contribute to the overall objectives of the organization, and that you can prove the value that you're bringing as a corporate legal department within specifically contract lifecycle management here, but also in other processes and operations.
Thank you very much. And then here, it's a quote of one of our customers, that thanks to Knowliah, the legal department is not just evolving, but thriving. Legal tech is pretty crucial. It streamlines its processes and so also the managing of contracts. So is what our clients say about the true added value of implementing a CLM system. And with that quote, we want to end this session. Are there any Q&A items in the chat box? I don't see them immediately, but let's take a couple more minutes so that people can still ask questions in the chat box before we end the session. I see that some people are still active. In the meantime, would love to show this also. Knowliah is part of stp.one's legal tech powerhouse. Here you can have an overview on where we are navigated between the corporates and legal department section. We have a lot of other nice products in the stp.one portfolio specifically for legal, because the aim is, of course, to simplify legal work. We did not have a question, but a thank you for the session. Thank you also for attending, of course. Here is some more information about what we do, international customers. If you have any more questions about what we can specifically do for you, I already dropped the link in the chat box where you can find more information about our solution. And if you have content-wise more questions, here are also the contact details. Thank you very much, Eve, for being here with us today. You're Director International Corporate Legal Tech. You brought with you a lot of experience and a lot of tips and tricks for the audience to implement a CLM system into their way of working and taking the next step in digitalization. You can mail to Eve, or you can just visit the website, go quickly through it and fill in a contact form if you have any more requests. The presentation will be available afterwards, and we definitely hope to see you again at one of the other sessions. We will have still 2 sessions this year. Maybe an AI topic will come up or any other topic. If you have some suggestions, please do drop them in the chat box here also below. And then I would love to thank everyone for being here with us today and hope to see you soon again at another session.
Thank you all.
Thank you.